just see the participants coming in there now, so we'll just wait until see we're all filling up, which is fantastic. Very good. Well, it's 4 o'clock, and I know that from experience, these things we end taking a lot of the time. So I'd like to start now and introduce myself. My name is Sam. I'm an environmental educator, and we're here today for our Junior Landcare webinar, which is taking learning outdoors using First Nations perspective. So on that note, I would, of course, like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that I'm coming to you from today, which is the Wiradjuri people, and I'd like to acknowledge the elders past, present, and emerging as well too. We've got some other people working with me as well too, some really great voices and great minds as well. So I'd like to introduce Adam and Costa. Adam Shipp is a proud Wiradjuri man and educator who's developed Junior Landcare's First Nations perspective learning resources. And of course, Costa Georgiadis is our Junior Landcare ambassador. And we're delighted that he could be here today too. So I'd like to pass it over to both of you.
Thanks, Sam.
Now, which country are you guys on at the moment?
So I guess I'll jump in first. I'm Adam Shipp. Nice to meet everyone here on the webinar today. So I am currently coming from Ngunnawal and Ngambri country here in beautiful Canberra. This is actually my birthplace. So I was born and raised here and spent a good time of my life here, 37 years actually, and very obviously very much home for me. However, I have moved back in the last 2 years to my my nan's country out Dubbo, New South Wales, and Pop being around Nyngan, New South Wales, and my wife also been from Wello Mob out at New South Wales. So for our three young family, that's the country we are living back on now. But yeah, look, it's always good for me work-wise to still be able to come back and connect to Canberra and beautiful Ngunnawal and Ngambri country, and be out. Today I was out with a local Ngunnawal man, taking a few people out on country, so it's been a beautiful day here. So I'll let Costa share where he's coming from.
Thanks, Adam. That's interesting what you say about Nyngan, because that's where my dad grew up, so it's got a special connection for me out on that country, and I've been out there enough times to appreciate that incredible river country. On the my grandfather had land on the banks of the Bogan. Beautiful place. And today I'm coming to you from Nipaluna in Hobart, and I'm down here for a Youth Climate Leaders Conference, which really is a wonderful thread into everything about what we're going to talk about today when it comes to our youth and how they connect and understand and how they are stepping up to care for country. And I'm particularly fueled because I went out to a section of and was sort of out in the Huon Valley and walked amongst some giant trees. And yeah, I don't know if you can see in my eyes, but I'm totally recharged in nature. So ready for this yarn, Adam.
That's good. I am too. So yeah, you got to always, nature always helps us recharge and get us back and ready. So it's good.
Absolutely. Hey, I wouldn't mind finding out where people are coming to us from, the country they're coming from. So in the chat, if you would like to, please write the name of the country that you're coming from, and it'd be very interesting to see where we're getting our audience from today as well too. Thanks, Adam and Costa. Now, in case we've got anybody who's joining us today who isn't familiar with Junior Landcare, Junior Landcare is one of the Landcare Australia's flagship programs, and it focuses on providing children the opportunity to play an active role in ensuring the safe future of their environment. Junior Landcare is actually 25 years old and provides funding through Junior Landcare grants, programs, and a wide range of educational resources on the Junior Landcare Learning Centre, which is kindly supported by Woolworths. The learning activities in the Learning Centre have been created by educators and created for educators as well too. And you'll find great projects to do, and they're all linked to the Australian curriculum under 4 main areas, that being biodiversity, food production, First Nations perspectives, and waste management as well too. So the purpose of the day is we're going to be giving some tips and guidance to educators who are keen to explore ways to introduce outdoor learning with their students, and to do that with, I guess, a First Nations perspective lens as well too. And we're going to chat about our own personal experiences, what's worked for us, some of the projects that we've done as well too. Adam, you're going to give us some guidance about engaging meaningfully with your own communities, and we'll touch on a couple of Junior Landcare learning resources that will be good activities to get started with there as well too. So Adam, I guess to kick things off, for an educator like myself and I guess many of the other educators that are watching today, why is it important for us to connect with local mob before undertaking a First Nations perspective project? And I guess it's a 2-part question. What tips do you have for us as well too?
For sure. Thanks, Sam. There's a lot to answer, but I'll and also, given that this is, I guess, my perspective and things as well, and that, we are such a very diverse mob, right across Australia. So different communities will have different ways and different protocols of doing this. But I guess when I sort of developed these resources with Junior Landcare, my big main focus was to develop them in a way that schools had to reach out to local community and engage with local providers. So whether that's a cultural business, etc., that provides a service for educators or for students, in a school, or even if it's reaching out, I guess, to community, to elders, etc. So, I mean, I tried to develop it in that way that it was very broad, the perspectives and the learning, so that, we could have that influence there. And a reason why, I guess, I developed it is going back to what I just said before. We are very diverse. When you're talking about things like seasons, for example, seasons vary so much across different mobs and different groups, and so you really need to understand that local focus and perspective. I was thinking just the other day on this about, my own children. They go, like the school that they go to out in Dubbo, and they're learning about seasons of Kakadu, which is fine. Like, I understand that as part of the First Nations curricular type thing that they're learning, but that's such a far place away for them. For my daughter coming home and saying, where is that, Kakadu and things, and then I have to sort of come in and say, well, for this country here, it's quite different, the weather and the things, and have a think about, the different things that we go through, and sort of yarn to them also about some of our cultural understandings of the different changes, but also just in general looking and feeling of how seasons change, and so I guess what I'm sort of trying to get at there is that's the really important thing within these learning guides, is to reach out and connect with local community. Now, I know that can be easier said than done in a lot of places. Some places are very blessed. We've got lots of, like, a big Aboriginal community and groups of people there. Other places it may feel like there isn't. But I often, think of, and Costa might be able to jump in on this experience too, but like, I think of a school that we went to, Costa and I, when we were unveiling the Yarning Circle the Yarning Circle perspectives last year. And it was a school in Balmain. They had one Indigenous student, and the one Indigenous student, Torres Strait Islander girl, very, very passionate about her culture. And her father was there, and he was so passionate to be able to share, and knowing that the school wanted to share their Torres Strait Islander culture. And just seeing her and her peers respecting her in that yarning space and listening to her stories, and for her to be able to put her headdress on, like I could see the pride in her. And that was she was one student in the whole school. Like, it was a huge school, wasn't it, Costa? Like,
Yeah,
and she was the
yeah,
only Indigenous student in that school, but that was a way the school engaged with that community, and I think for schools, for me anyway, that's a no-brainer is to start with the students you have in the school, and talking to the parents, and the parents may or may not want to talk to you, and that's the whole thing about relationship building too, but like most cases, the parents are going to be able to guide you on to where and who to go to get that next level of I guess, understanding and teaching from community members and First Nations perspectives. Costa, I might let you talk a little bit on that if you wanted with that experience.
yeah. Well, I think exactly what you said. It was a great example, for us to observe that, in an entire school community, there was just one little link, this tiny little thread that was still there. And when you take that time to have a little look, you'll probably be surprised in most school communities that there will be that little thread. But in saying that, and I remember we've spoken about this a bit, Adam, and this is why this has been established by Junior Landcare, it shouldn't be a reason not to pursue or to feel like some sort of awkwardness about starting this process. We can't expect that this just gets done by First Nations people because where's the invitation if we're not if we're in the positions of organization and power? We need to break down those barriers to make it easier. And what that means is stepping out of our comfort zone a little and saying, all right, we've got to do some homework. But rather than seeing it as a burden, or we just want to get on with it. No, it is it. This process is it. And that's what these learning modules are all about. They're saying, well, who and where are these pathways? And there's certain repetitive little details that these work modules give you to sort of say, okay, well, I'll pursue here, or I'll try this group, or I'll pursue that, and then even if you don't, you can contact us at Junior Landcare and get assistance, additional assistance. But yeah, I think the key thing for what we saw at that school was the tiniest of little threads is all you need, and then actually amplify that as the learning, that it's not about, we're stepping through that to get to this destination. No, if your school needs that destination and needs to take some time, whether that takes a week or a month or 3 months or 6 months, the end result will be all the richer because you've taken all the students along. And if the year 6 students, for example, are on the back end of it and they don't see, that first stone get turned or whatever it is, it doesn't matter, because this is about the school's long-term journey.
Thank you very much for that. That's really it's a great, I guess, step into where we're going to take this discussion next, I think, because and really interesting. Thank you, everybody, for all your input on the chat there, putting the country where you're on. It's just amazing to see where everybody's coming in from today, and really appreciating your input there. Just on your input as well too, if you do have questions, there's a Q&A little function there as well too, that you can put your questions in. We will make sure that we have time at the end for questions as well, so we've built in time, so it's not just us talking. We really do want to answer as many of your questions as we can. But just on I guess, Adam, and you touched on this as well too, is where everybody's coming in from, and the idea of one of our First Nations seasons activities that we've got there. And one of the areas that people can, I guess, really look at and find ways to connect with their local country and learn more about First Nations seasons is that seasonal exploration activity. And we've got one on our learning centre, and there's a great video of you there on that one too as well. And I know that I've done when I think about my own teaching, what I first Googled, because that often is the teacher's first port of call, it was taking me up to the Cape York area, and it was very different to what we get down here, Wiradjuri. So I had to do a lot of research. I had to reach out as well too, and I found that we've actually got 7 seasons down here as well too. So and that was I guess eye opener for me as well too. I had to look at the different seasonal indicators, and we got our kids out having a look at there as well too, and learning the name of the seasons. We had there's a Guling, which is the orchid season, when the orchids are just starting to come out of the ground and the silver wattles are flowering, and that's followed by what the season we're in now is Puanit, which is the tadpole season. So it was a matter of getting out and about and seeing what, and I think we've just got a slide coming up there as well too, just looking at what we saw when we were out looking and making that connection as well too. And maybe just even in the chat as well too, if you're familiar with First Nations seasons, or if there's something that's happening in your area, maybe it's a great time just to put that in that chat there as well too. Adam and Costa, why do you think the exploring weather and seasons is a good way of connecting to your local country?
Well, I think for me, and sorry to jump in if I jumped over you, Costa, but I think just understanding country, is about sitting and observing that observation and taking that time. And Costa's mentioned it already, like the time and relationship building with community, and mob takes time as well, like for non-Indigenous people that are trying to do this work. And so like it's that kind of reflective time on country to just notice the subtle differences and changes, and to kind of be in that present state, and for children like these days, I think so important to be in that present state. And you can be in there in that yarning circle, it can be under a tree, and it can be as simple as discussing, okay, what do you see the difference at this time of year? We sat out here 2 months ago, were you cold, and now you're feeling warm, like that. It's as simple as that. And then if you have that knowledge and you have that, those local community knowledge and people, knowledge holders that want to come in and talk more and expand more on that, that's a great sort of leeway. They can come in and say, yeah, well, this is actually our true spring. This is when we, we start to hear the thunderstorms clap. This is when, there can be all these kind of things that they elaborate more on, and what animal behaviors might be happening, and tells them which animal we can go and hunt now, or whatever it is. And again, that's up to that community and that place that you're in to kind of lead that conversation. So I think for me, yeah, that sitting, observing, slowing down, looking at country, healing on country, like even if it is in a playground under some big trees, that's healing for our children, and it's what we need more of.
And Costa, I think we lost you just there for a second, but I think you're back.
Yeah. The, rookie error.
Oh, good.
I plugged my phone in, but I didn't turn the switch on. So I'm wondering, like, well, why did it die? And then I looked to the PowerPoint and realized that was very rookie. But anyway, I'm back. So all's good.
A small matter. Welcome back. We're just talking about First Nations seasons, and I was mentioning that right now we're in the Puanit season in the Wiradjuri country here, and we're just the question was why we think that exploring weather and seasons is a good way of encouraging that connection to your local country.
Yeah, look, going straight off the back of what Adam was talking about, I always refer to it as putting your nature goggles on when I'm talking to students, and this threads directly into this idea of observation, and these are detailed observations that have been built upon for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And when we think about that as science and we apply that scientific lens to these observations and these stories, then what we're doing with the students in our care is giving them this skill to actually slow down and observe. And in a world where everything is accelerated and everything is urgent, you know, as educators, when we can put the brakes on in a way that we're not saying don't do that, do this, we're just saying, well, to do this you need to be still and calm, and you need to start to make these threads that when you observe nature, you can observe it in all the senses. So as Adam was talking about, you can feel the temperature, you can feel the wind, you feel the rain, but then you smell the rain and you smell the wind, and then you taste the difference through different things tasting different because of seasonality. And then, of course, you hear what are the sounds that you observe, and you can actually hear seasonal change through the bird life and through the sounds of, you know, leaves returning or leaves behaving differently, all of these things. And I won't go into all of those, but there's so much that we can
We might just be a little bit frozen there, but we'll come back. And I've noticed in the chat as well too, a few people mentioned that the Bureau of Meteorology's also got some interesting resources on that as well too. And at the end of today, what we'll do is we'll share any resources that come up, and we'll also share. Oh, sorry, Costa. I think we might have just lost a little bit of the connection there for a second.
Okay.
I was just saying that we'll share some of the resources that we come across today as well too, and we'll be sending that out at the end. Now, another good activity, I guess, at this time of year, and it really does link in, would be a habitat observation activity. And I really like, as an educator, I really like being able to, not just when I'm teaching the biological sciences, is I really like to get the kids out of the classroom and having a look through the gardens at school, or going up further up the back of the school where we've got a few eucalyptus trees, or having a look at some of our Indigenous plantings as well, so in our wildflower gardens, and running a habitat observation activity. And we have a resource in the Junior Landcare Learning Centre about this. And I find it's a really good way to just help educators understand and learn about biodiversity. Now, I've got a couple of slides up here as well too, because Costa, I think you mentioned something, is it helps to going outdoors and being part of nature helps to springboard those questions as well too, about why we're seeing things. And then Adam, that then for me links directly in with the Indigenous seasons as well too, and looking at change as well too. So on the left hand, I've got a little picture of some sawfly larvae, and then there's some students on my school on the right hand side, just measuring how much the plants are growing in springtime as well too. So Costa, when you go and observing outdoors, how does it engage the children?
Well, I think what you're doing is you're making these connections that, you know, those sawfly larvae are on plants, the plants are an indicator of the soil. The animals that we're observing are an indicator of the plants, which are an indicator of the soil, which are an indicator of the weather. And you know, on a scale of permanence, when we start to think in those terms about what are the things that are fixed here, what are like the soil, and we tend to think, oh yeah, the soil, the subsoil is something that's been built up over a long period of time. How is that impacting on the plants? And then what do those plants provide for the animals in terms of food and habitat? Like, where do they eat? What do they eat? When do they eat? And why are they eating? So all of a sudden, these elements are dictating some patterns. And that's what observation is all about. And when I think about First Nations observation and science, their capacity to see patterns and then reflect those patterns in their drawings and their recordings, their physical recordings, their musical and their dance recordings, you start to appreciate this understanding that the environment is about survival and not just sustainability. And then we start to go into this idea of regeneration. And it starts with habitat, because habitat is where you're safe. And if you're safe, then you're surviving. And whether that's a sawfly larvae or a marsupial or a bird, once you've got safety, you've then got the capacity to survive and then regenerate by having a safe environment to then have more have a new population and regenerate a population. So for me, I see that link and those patterns just going from one step to another.
Adam, can you add to that about how it helps children to understand their country a little bit better as well too?
Yeah, I think when, like, for example, some of the resources I've kind of done, like, helped schools, like, just in general with in terms of putting perspective into their learning, you know, I think it for me anyway gets the students grounding in that place, you know. So an example can be if a garden's been developed, and I know we have like bush tucker garden resources as well with Landcare Australia, but like a developer garden, and one of the gardens, for example, one of the plants in the garden, you know, throw a really common one out there that a lot of educators probably know or have in your school, like Lamandra, for example. And it's as simple as not only connecting to the uses of the Lamandra, which is very, you know, multiple uses, but then it's like looking and expanding on, well, how can we get the students, you know, kind of thinking more around that. So for example, the seed, right? We can collect the seed, we can grind it, we can use it in breads, in damper or whatever. Like from a traditional sense, sorry. So like, how can we, okay, well, let's get the students involved in that process, and maybe you have a local custodian come in and be involved in that process of collecting that seed. I've been to a school where Lamandra was landscaped absolutely everywhere, and you could actually do it. And I did it with the kids, and we went around and we collected all the seeds. So they're part of that sort of that old way of doing it. Then we're showing them, okay, let's collect these seeds. But then it's like adding some other elements of their learning in there. So, okay, well, let's weigh these seeds. How much did we collect? Let's weigh it up. How much do you reckon we're gonna need to feed four of us? How much do you reckon we're gonna need to feed a big clan, you know, of us? Like, there's so many things that you can then start to evolve on that learning. So they're sort of getting that, I guess, that traditional lens and focus of, okay, this plant was collected, it's been collected for thousands of years, and you know, we're collecting the seed like such and such, that group that the country that we're learning, you know, and living on. So they're getting that element and that focus, but then it's kind of expanding and always using their mind to think about, okay, well, gee, how much seed would we need? How many of these plants per meter would we actually need to feed 10 people, you know, like, and trying to figure out all those other things. And like, that's just one part of that plant. That plant has like 4 or 5 6 uses, so that's like one tiny little resource just there that you could kind of develop and do. Probably, I don't know, I'm not a teacher in a school, but you could probably do quite a lot of lessons just on that. So
And
for me, I guess it's kind of like getting them engaged in learning the understanding of that cultural way, but then also expanding on that. So.
I like what you say there, Adam, because you start it with the action, like going out and observing and saying, this is the plant, this is the name, this is its original name. So rather than it just being this classroom activity of like, oh yeah, this is a plant and you can do these things with it, going out, getting pricked by the spikes and things like that's sensory, and we want to try and include as many of those senses in that action part of it, so that they feel it and they remember it, and then you've gone on and you've made the flower, and you've done mathematics, you've done home home science, or food and food tech, or whatever. Like there's all these elements just out of a Lamandra, which is as tough as all tough can be, and most schools have them. And it's just this ready learning opportunity, and that's before you've even gone down the many other uses that can then from an education and a teacher's point of view, you go, oh, guess what, we're going back there. What do you mean we've done it? No, you haven't. It can also have this, and so let's do this lesson now. And then literally one plant can almost fill a week's lessons.
And it's also, when we're tying back to seasons, seeds are only in one part of the season. Flowers that they have another use are in another part of the season, and it's like having the students look on that one plant over the whole year and notice the changes. Notice, oh, actually,
like the new growth.
Yeah, there's new growth. Oh, there's butterflies coming to that now because it has flowers, and then that gets out into that sort of wholeness of looking of how our people do it, and look at how everything's kind of interconnected. So, yeah, so much. Again, like I said, one plant you can do so much with, and teach many perspectives.
And Adam, that might help to answer one of the questions that we've got about a yarning circle. I'll come back to that question, as well as another question I've got about how an educator's deepen connection to their place over time. But I just wanted to touch on some of the other bigger projects that I know that some educators are interested in doing as well too, because I guess the observational activities that we're talking about, making the link to the seasons or the habitat observations, are activities that don't cost a lot and can be done quite easily. And I guess, and everybody out there as well too, before we move to chatting about those larger projects, please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A as well too, because we'll get to that in about 5 minutes time. Like I said, we have allocated time for that as well too, because we would like to be able to get as many of your questions answered as possible. If people are interested in doing bigger projects like planting a bush tucker garden or a native garden or creating a yarning circle, we do have those curriculum linked learning activities on the Junior Landcare Centre for them too. Adam, do you have any tips for people looking to embark on those larger type projects?
Yeah, so garden wise, like I've done a lot, I guess, over the years, a lot of bush tucker gardens. I think for any school, like, you want to plan for longevity. You don't want just this approach of let's buy the plants, stick them in the compacted soil that's been had 100 trucks driven over it over the last 20 years. It's a dust bowl, let's just chuck some natives in, they'll be right, type thing. I think that approach, I've seen it way too many times. And when I was doing it full time as a business, doing the gardens, fine, it was good for me because it was bringing me back more business a year later back to the school, because everything had died, if I was getting plants for the school or whatever. And I started to say, I don't want to see this. Like, and this is what I was communicating to schools, start to really plan in, like, how do you want this to be used in the first 2 months of its life, the first 2 years, the first 20, you want to really plan longevity with it. And so you've got to think of things like aspect, you got to think of things like soil, you know, because soil has changed so much over the years, you know, in these places. And you've got to think of things like where, locality in the school, you know, because you don't want to be putting it in a thoroughfare where kids are just running through. Um, so there's a lot of considerations, and I think a lot of those considerations, and we've sort of stepped through in our resources about what to do. Obviously, as well, and I keep harping on it, but it's like that engagement too is so important with, you know, the community and mob and you know, the Aboriginal community, Torres Strait Islander community, who you're going to be working with. It's really important. Like resources are great, books are great to have, you know, there with plant, you know, the uses and things, etc. But it's always so much more genuine to have a, you know, First Nations person there to talk about that and come in and things. And maybe even having, you know, depending where you are, a community of people coming and plan and being involved in the project. And that could be starting with design as well. So you can have students involved in, like, let's design this. Let's take our time, you know, let's really
That's
think
it.
about what we want here. So I hope that sort of answers that question there. I think with the yarning circles, again, I sort of put it, I remember in the resources, you don't need to go your classic thing if you don't want that sandstone block. I've seen a lot of schools do that. And actually, in some places, you know, I've yarned to some elders and they're like, this isn't actually our material from this country. Like, I wouldn't have used that, you know, if they had come spoken to us first, you know. So there are things to consider too. Like it's, you know, and that's what I've put in that those resources as well, is like when you talk to community first before just running out and, oh, we need to put these blocks in, you'll start to understand that maybe they're not appropriate for the country that you're on. Like maybe you need to really think about the resources that you're actually going to sit on. And there's quite a lot in it. And so I think again, it's circling right back around to that time thing. Like you have the time, you don't need to rush on these things to, yeah, you know, I'll let.
And this does link actually a little bit to a question that we got from Carly as well too, and about how we can source Indigenous plants for your local area. Carly's working on a yarning circle project in Canberra and is wondering what they could plant at their preschool. They're aiming to establish a community garden that families come to work in with the children and the educators as well too. Adam, do you know if there's like I guess Indigenous nurseries or even Aboriginal run plant nurseries or Landcare groups? Who have you worked with in the past just supplying the right plants for the right place?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. And I guess it's going to be dependent on location. So there's like out in Dubbo Stronger Pathways, they have a nursery, Aboriginal run nursery out there, you know, so they provide a lot of the schools with native bush foods and things. I've seen in the chat there, you know, Indigigrow, they're a great company up there in Sydney in La Perouse, Aboriginal run company there. Peter Cooley, he's great to work with as well, and I have in the past. Who's the CEO there, and also an sort of offshoot from them. Some of the fellas I've sort of, I guess, made a bit of a relationship with is Bush to Bowl, who are out in the western suburbs of Sydney. Again, great. So they've learned a lot from Peter Cooley and gone out and doing their own nursery now. But in terms of like a right broader across the country, I wouldn't be able to give you. And again, it's that having to know your local place and community really. Like I can only sort of give what I know, you know, and I know that Indigigrow and Bush to Bowl will post plants out, you know, so I've gotten plants from Indigigrow out to Dubbo 5 hours west and they've been fine, you know, they've lasted. And but I think the best thing is trying to find local
Yeah.
if you can. In Canberra, there isn't any Indigenous run. There is a Tyson, I'll throw his name out there. Young fellow, he's a Ginninderra Ranger, Aboriginal Ranger. And he does grow a few sort of like it's a bit of a niche kind of backyard kind of jobby thing at the moment. So he sort of has a few things available, but generally around the Canberra region where I was living, Cool Country Natives were one that you could go to. They're a non-Indigenous company, but they have done a lot and trying to do a lot to kind of work with local Ngunnawal people here and things and have that relationship building. So, but yeah, in terms of across the country, it's too much for me to say where and who you would source from, So it's really the homework the educator has to do, I guess.
Yep. And I've just, from a personal note, I've worked a lot with local government as well too, in the environment offices, and they will generally have a good connection with the local Landcare groups, any Aboriginal run nurseries or Indigenous nurseries as well too.
Yeah,
just before we get, sorry, Costa, go.
Yeah, just on what Adam was saying there, and it's just bubbling up again. I think, and I want to stress it because I think we don't want to just be ticking a box here, because it's just continuing this kind of, oh well, we'll use that now, we'll take this now and feel good about doing something, and that's not to say it's about feeling good and feeling bad. It's actually about doing this as a process that is not only respectful but regenerative for the processes that have been here long before we've been here. And so to think that we can just go, oh, quickly, enthusiasm, yes, definitely. Like, you know me. I mean, I'm right up there on the Richter scale when it comes to enthusiasm. But I think we really need to think about this in terms of more a case of deliberate optimism with a patience and an obligation and a duty to see this as the process that it is. And like Adam said, that's going to mean, well, who can I find that is doing some native plants? And if there isn't any local First Nations mob doing it, well, who's the nursery or who's the Landcare group? And then I can use that knowledge and pair that up with the people that I find that can help us, the mob that can help us, and slowly piece this together. It's modular in a sense, but it's modular in a sense, but it's also a case of finding the pieces and putting them together step by step without rushing. And that way, if it takes a little, however long it takes is what it takes, and it will be sounder and stronger and better for it. And Adam and I have seen, a couple of school projects that have done that, and they even thought very carefully about the stone they brought in. All of a sudden, it makes you realize, like, let's actually be local. Let's be local in every aspect of it, because sometimes we just think of local in the things that we know, but then when you start to take it out and say, well, am I bringing this rock from far away, and what could I do? So you're actually changing your whole outlook on this, not to make it harder, but to make it more complete.
And I think that's really important about what you're mentioning there with connection as well too, because, and we've got a couple of questions about that, about how we can build connections to a place, at a school, or I've got one about how we can connect country better in early childhood settings as well too. I work in schools, but I also work in early learning centres as well too, and I'm always trying to build, it doesn't matter if it's a school or an ELC, I'm always still trying to build that connection to that local, the plants, their meaning, their purpose in the environment as well too. So I guess that's how I do it. How can we, what's some other ways of connecting and making that connection in not just schools, in those early learning centres as well too? Because it's not just making it simpler for the younger audiences, because I mean where I was teaching this morning, they had some really high level stuff coming through. They were great.
They're all over it. They're all over it.
Yeah.
I agree.
And they're great little scientists as well too. So for me, it's encouraging and it's explaining as well too, to make that connection.
Well, for the youngies, like I love working and doing stuff with early learning. They just take it in so much, and it sets them up then. And it also sets our children up with, and this is all our children, not just our, my Melbourne First Nations, like this is all our children that are here now. It sets them up with that expectation when they go into primary school. We want to continue learning. We go into high school, we want to continue learning, like, so that's, it's such an important period to connect with children. And a lot of the things, I mean, just personally that I've done, and I know there's lots of different, really deadly First Nation businesses out there that do some really great stuff in early learning, like dance and, other things like that. But for me, I mean, I'm plant person, and I do tell a few stories because stories really connect with children. So I'll tell some of those kind of cultural yarns and stories. But like it's so easy to get those young children engaged by feeling and touching and smelling. And I'll have, a plant, I'll say, oh, this is peppermint gum, for example, and have a smell of this. And it's like instant. They're just in there, they're crushing it and smelling it. And then, I'll use a Cassinia, for example, sticky. So it's like okay, well, we use this one for a Band-Aid. You're always running around the playground, you fall over, you're always hurting yourself, you need a Band-Aid. This is a Band-Aid that you find in the bush, and they'll rub it up and put it on and pretend that they've got a sore, and things. So it's that kind of really like hands-on engaging. And I think I saw a couple of comments of that, like showing picture stories and things too. Like that's really, really
Yeah.
important. And that's something you can do in that yarning space as well. At Costa, another school I remember we went to, and I think this school didn't have any Indigenous First Nations students.
Yeah.
But, the teacher said to me, oh, I don't know what to do in the yarning circle, but I just take the kids there and read. And I'm like, that's perfect. That's a perfect thing to do. Like culturally, like we would be telling stories and things. And I think I did tell a story that day to the kids, but you would
Yeah.
tell a story and that yarn in the circle, and that's part of that too. Like you utilize the space, like take the kids out and read a story. It's as simple as that.
And
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I agree, Adam. Like off that story from that visit, and I think continuing that theme of the comment about story and your comments, like you can actually, particularly for early learning centres, think about extending your library to really start to include the First Nations books and those seasonal aspects. So we're not continually creating this strange kind of world for them where we might be singing a song about autumn and the wind when there's no wind in autumn blowing the leaves because there's no leaves, and the wind is in October, not in April. So there's these little ways that you can start to shift the story narrative to then run parallel with the activities that Adam's setting up in this series of learning activities. But yeah, getting some new books in there and starting to just sit in the yarning circle and start to embed these new cycles and seasons and put markers in for those, and then go to that next step, which you talk about in this work, in these activities, Adam, about doing a season journal. Like that journal is so important because then they're saying, oh, well, when did the winds come? And we noted it down last year, and now this year, oh, look, the winds have come back again. And it's actually now, like Sydney's getting bashed with wind. That's when we get it. We get it now. So September, October, is that windy stuff. So there's a nice opportunity to start to move the storytelling narrative across to our seasons and the new seasonal regime once we start to see it.
I've got a comment as well too from a couple of people. Somebody's mentioned that Nature Book Week is coming up, and it's a great way to engage, especially the younger groups as well too. And I've got another one from Emma that's saying that they've included nature story time in their Junior Landcare activities in their local kindergarten, which is a really nice way of bringing in too. And to make that connection to First Nations communities, I had another question about somebody wanting to know how they connect with elders if they don't know anybody, if there's nobody within that school community that they can reach out to.
I think I've tried to give a few tips and tricks, and again, I try to stress, and I think I've stressed in every resource that I've made, that like it's always going to be dependent on place, but I think I've put a few sort of tips and things in each resource about maybe places that you could start with. So if you're a town, a small town, like there's like an Aboriginal Lands Council, or if there's a similar like that, a community group that's happening, that might be a way where you could at least reach out and start those initial conversations. I think I said it at the start too. For me, the place to start, if it's possible, is with the student and the parents in the school. And I'm not guaranteeing that you'll get a connection straight away, but what I'm saying is, for me, as a no-brainer for an educator, would be to go to the source first. Who's in our school? Do we see this parent every 3 o'clock at pickup? Can we just go over and initiate a yarn and just say, "Oh, hey, how you going?" But understand too that they might not have all the answers for you. They might not be the person, but initiating that conversation with the intention that you want, in terms of the good intention of, we just want to increase our First Nation perspectives and understandings. Is there any sort of tips or ways you could do that? And I think, that kind of reaching out and seeing that you are genuine and wanting to do this is a great way to approach it, I think. So I hope that sort of answers it. I mean, I've put lots of different things in that resource of, tips again, but again, like I said, I'm really going off the knowledge I know of the communities I've lived and grown up in ways you can do it, and it's going to be different right over in WA. It could be different in the community a couple 100 Ks away from me as well. Like, things will be different and ways will be different, but it might give you some tips of how to start initiate those conversations.
And we'll send the link out as well too. After the email, after the webinar, we will send an email with all the links that we've discussed as well too, and links to the Junior Landcare Learning Centre as well too. Sorry, Costa, were you going to say something then and I cut you off? Oh, all good.
No.
Very good. I'm just having a look for some other questions as well too. Somebody's looking at their service using the 8 ways of learning. I was just wondering if it's too generalised. I like to, when I'm teaching, I like to be as specific as possible, because then I think you can make some really great connections, for me anyway. And Costa, I've seen when you've been working with students as well too, that really being as specific and drilling down, and like what you mentioned with the sawfly before as well too, that by really drilling down and going very specific, it's probably knowledge that nobody will maybe use in their later lives, and that's fine. But it's I think learning isn't about what you're actually learning, it's about the process of learning, and it's about making the love of learning, and by learning one thing, you're going to shape your brain to be able to learn something else in the future as well too. So I think, for me, being as specific as possible, if that answers the question, would be my answer. I'm happy to get some feedback from you both as well too.
I would just take the opportunity quickly. Sorry, Costa, before, because I have to do this because, family and that, but give my sister a plug too. Shipp, she's an educator. She's been teaching for 20 plus years and has written a book, Listening from the Heart. So for educators out there, she kind of speaks about that and that journey with the 8 ways learning and thinks she's a very passionate educator. So Listening from the Heart, Shipp. I'll give my sister a plug, but Costa, I'll let you have a
No, carry on, mate. I'm just writing that down because I mean these are those little nuggets that every educator loves to hear about, and it's not about your sister. Well, it's about your sister, but it's not about because it's your sister. That's a bonus, but it's just nice to to know that, 25 years more of education, and then that she's written a book that has gravity and connection, and for us as educators to get our hands on that and be able to put that story into little minds and hearts is a privilege.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Costa. And I've seen some great other comments of other Indigenous authors. I mean, we have blessed with so many, great First Nation authors and educators out there now too. So it's really about expanding, your thought and looking out there for those resources. So, because we have a lot of our people that want to guide yourselves as educators and want our students to be more engaged and connect to this learning, because we see it not only as benefit to get a great understanding of our communities, but we see that benefit for all our children when they connect to this, how it's just going to change their way of thinking.
I've got a question here as well too, and this is one interests me as well too, because I know how ELC, early childhood centres often work, and in my role as an educator, sometimes when I'm working in early childhood, we don't have opportunities for long-term projects and partnerships, or the benefit of consistently being with the same children. They're not always there. So this question is asking what sort of, and this does happen in my school projects as well too. I might be at the same school over a few weeks, but we have different kids there. So what sort of activities and experiences would be valuable as a casual educator? Because I know that we've got a few casual educators on board today, and some Junior Landcare facilitators as well too. Is there anything that stands out that you've done, Adam or Costa, for those sessions that you're not going to have that same group of children over a long period of time?
That's a good question. I would probably, for me, it would just be if you're coming in as casual and it may not be a long term, it's still just trying to put a focus in there, while you're there, and you may only be there for a month in the centre, but you won't understand the impact that you might do by just coming in to the centre and having a little bit of that focus there, because it might actually set something in place. It might actually set a ball rolling for that centre to expand and grow on those learnings. So,
and one thing that I focus on as well too in my teaching is that we've always trying to produce something or have something that we can display as part of that as well too. So if somebody isn't there, then it's at least going to start conversations or something that we can anchor back to as well.
And I think going back to what we were talking about before about the nature goggles, and I also talk about your site analysis goggles, where, and Adam, you were saying, where's the windy area of our garden here at the ELC, and where's the hot area, and let's mark that on the ground. Let's mark the shade on the ground, and then that's a great activity, because you go back 15 minutes later and they've put the line on the ground, and then suddenly the chalk mark, it's like, I go, hey, what's going on here? I told you to put it on the line. And they're like, oh, but we did, and then, where's the hot spot? Where's the cold spot? Oh, where are all the leaves blowing to, and suddenly, no, let's make a plan, and we'll mark it like a treasure map. Oh, this is the treasure where we can stay cool in the summer, or in the winter, this is the treasure spot because, this is warm and we get the sun and we can sit there when we come outside. So I think you can always go outside and do site assessment. Where does the rain fall? Oh, it falls here. What happens if it falls here? Oh, that goes into the grass. But what happens if it falls here? Oh, it runs on the pavement over here. But where does it go? Oh, into this thing on the ground. What's that? Oh, that's a drain. Where's that go? Let's follow it out onto the street and then follow it, and all of a sudden, and then you get out there in the rain and really throw the cat amongst the pigeons and send the kids home wet. I'd get way busted if I was there every day. But and muddy and wet and and all those things. But yeah, I think there's so much that we can, and as a short-term worker in a particular place, it's exciting for you too as an educator to go, oh, well, where I'm going to put these goggles on and see where the sun hits and the water hits and the wind blows and all of those things. So yeah, I think that's a really easy one to just do over and over, because the kids, there's always something new in the weather.
Yeah, and I just on that before, I know we're closing up, but just on that again, another activity, simple one, I think I developed for some schools, Hardenbergia, again, a really common plant, flowers, one of, for many regions, the flower comes out, the cod will be about, cods are running with and a simple thing you can do with kids, okay, well, this is flowering and this is what the local people, indicated with that flower. Let's go and test some water. Let's see what's the difference between the water at this time of year when it's flowering. Why are those fish moving? And so you could go down to your local park and test some water, and you could do that at another time of year. And the water's really cold now, and and again, it gets that tangible. It gets them involved in stuff and learning. So it's just so many ways. Like you said, Costa, to get them out and involved.
Yeah, wonderful. There's great insights there. So thank you very much. And a huge thank you to everyone who has joined us today. And Adam and Costa, thank you so much for your expertise, your experience, and your enthusiasm as well. So I always get a lot out of working with you both whenever we have these. And everyone, thank you so much for joining us. I've seen a few questions whether we'll send out an email with the links that I mentioned. Absolutely, we'll be sending out a link with an email with all the links that have been mentioned, including links to the Junior Landcare Centre where you can access all the educational resources we mentioned. And again, a big thank you to Woolworths for supporting that resource as well too. We'll also send a link in the email to a PD certificate that you can download. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot us an email at juniorlandcare@landcareaustralia.com.au. And any ideas for any future webinars would be great. So this webinar came from, the idea for this webinar came from some feedback from you, and Costa, Adam, I'm sure we'd love to do this again. So if you out there have any ideas for anything that you'd like us to encompass and investigate further, we'd love to be part of that as well too. If you'd like to keep in touch with all things Junior Landcare, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram, or subscribe for our monthly newsletter at our website. So thank you so much, everyone, and we really hope you enjoyed the session.
Thank you for all the thanks, everyone. I'm just watching this just go. I really appreciate it. It's just been a treat to read all the thoughts and the comments shared. And Adam, thank you for the inspiration you bring every time, and for bringing the First Nations portal here on the Junior Landcare in our world here to life, because I can see by the comments and the fact that everyone's been here and stayed here that they're really keen for this, and it's lovely to be able to put this information out there and give people the chance to connect as was the theme.
Definitely. My pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.